I found out I wasn't my mother's real daughter at the same moment I found out she'd cut me almost completely out of her will, and I swear to you, it felt less like a revelation and more like the floor quietly dropping 3 stories beneath my chair while everyone else kept sipping their coffee like nothing had changed, like my entire identity hadn't just been shoved into a paper shredder by a man in a gray suit reading from a stapled packet. I was sitting at a polished conference table in a strip mall law office, flanked by my 2 older brothers and my Aunt Shirley, and the attorney said in his even rehearsed voice, "To my eldest son, Mark, I leave the house at 214 Birchwood and its contents. To my younger son, Daniel, I leave the proceeds of my life insurance policy and any remaining savings. To my daughter, Lisa, I leave the sum of $1 in acknowledgement of our relationship." And then he turned the page and added, "And as I wrote here, because Lisa is not my biological child and I have provided for her in other ways. My name, my lack of biology, my entire place in the family, just a footnote sandwiched between legal phrases." I sat there blinking, the fluorescent light buzzing too loudly, the clock ticking, some car's bass thumping in the parking lot outside, and tried to process the sentence I was sure I'd misheard. "I'm sorry, could you read that last part again?" I asked, my voice doing that thin, papery thing it does when I'm trying not to cry. The attorney, Mr. Reynolds, glanced at my brothers and my aunt like he was asking permission to rewind my life, then back at the page. "Because Lisa is not my biological child," he repeated, "and I have provided for her in other ways." Mark stared down at his hands. Daniel studied a spot on the wall. Aunt Shirley pursed her lips like she'd been sucking on a lemon since 1982. "There must be a mistake," I said, laughing once too high. "I mean, that makes it sound like I'm adopted or something." No one said anything. A full 5 seconds passed, thick and heavy. Finally, Aunt Shirley sighed and said, "Well, honey, you always were dramatic. Your mother just wanted to be honest. Everyone knows." "Everyone who?" I asked. "Because I don't know. Are you saying I'm adopted?" Mr. Reynolds shifted, clearly not wanting to be in the middle of this. "Your mother did mention in our conversations that she and your father adopted you as an infant," he said carefully. "I was under the impression this was common knowledge in the family." My heartbeat slammed in my ears. "It's not," I said. "It's news to me." I looked at my brothers. "You knew." Mark wouldn't meet my eyes. Daniel cleared his throat. "Mom didn't want you to feel different," he muttered. "It wasn't we thought you knew in a way. I mean, you always joked about not looking like anyone." I had joked about that. I'd said things like, "How did I end up with green eyes in a family of brown?" and "Must be the milkman." They'd laughed. Mom had ruffled my hair and said, "God just made you special," and I'd taken that as one of those momisms. I hadn't thought it was literal. I felt my face go hot. "So let me get this straight," I said, because anger is sometimes the only thing between me and a full collapse. "My mom dies, I find out I'm adopted from a stranger in a suit, and the same sentence that tells me I'm not biological also explains why I get a whole $1 while my brothers get the house, the money, everything?" Aunt Shirley rolled her eyes. "Don't be so theatrical," she said. "You know your mother was worried about you. She said she'd already helped you plenty, helping with your apartment when you divorced, watching your kids, letting you live at home in your 20s. Mark has 3 kids in college. Daniel's got medical bills. It's different." "Different as in they're her sons and I'm the extra?" I shot back. Mark finally looked up. "No one said that," he snapped. "Stop twisting it. Mom loved you. She wanted the family home to stay with, blood." "You mean with you," I said. "The son who moved back in with her after his second divorce and never left." His jaw tightened. "I was the one there," he said. "When she fell, when she had the stroke, when she needed rides to the doctor. You rarely came down." "I was working," I said, "and raising 2 kids, an hour away, because I couldn't afford to move closer, because I was trying not to lean on her." Mr. Reynolds cleared his throat. "Perhaps some of these conversations are better had outside my office," he said, shuffling papers. "From a legal standpoint, the will appears properly executed. Your mother was confirmed competent at the time of signing. Daniel seized on that. See, he said. She knew what she was doing. She talked about it, Lise. She said, the boys will need the security more. Lisa will be fine. Besides, I've already given her what I can. It's not like we twisted her arm. I wanted to ask what security meant that I didn't deserve. I wanted to ask how many times my name had come up in those conversations and in what tone. Instead, I swallowed and asked the question that had lodged like a nail in my throat. Who are my biological parents? Aunt Shirley's nostrils flared. This isn't the time, she said. Your mother isn't even cold in the ground. She's been buried for 3 weeks, I interrupted. And apparently she's been lying to me for 52 years, so forgive me if I don't feel like honoring her timetable right now. Am I adopted or not? It was Daniel who finally said it. Yeah, he muttered. You are. Mom and Dad took you in when you were a baby. It's not some big conspiracy. Taken in from where? I asked. From who? Aunt Shirley stood up, clutching her purse. I'm not doing this, she said. Your mother wanted peace. She didn't want all this dredged up. Can't you just accept what she gave you and move on? What she gave me was $1 and a secret, I said. So no, I can't. That was the beginning. The rest of the day is a blur of phone calls and muted arguments and me driving home on autopilot, gripping the steering wheel so hard my knuckles hurt. I kept replaying childhood scenes in my head, suddenly in a new light. The way my birth certificate always seemed to be misplaced when I needed it for school, how my school pictures started abruptly at age 3 with no newborn photos in any album, how relatives would sometimes say, "You have no idea how lucky you are," in this loaded way I'd never fully understood. When I walked into my house, my grown daughter, Emily, looked up from the couch. How did it go? She asked, taking in my face. You look like you got punched. I laughed because what else do you do when your world shifts sideways? In a way I did, I said. Your grandma left me $1. And I'm adopted. Emily blinked. Wait, what? I sat down and told her. Saying the words out loud made them feel less like lines in a script and more like facts I had to decide what to do with. So Grandma knew? She asked. And Grandpa? Apparently, I said. And your uncles? And Aunt Shirley? Maybe half the family. Everyone but me. Emily's eyes filled. Why wouldn't she tell you? She whispered. I thought back to my mother's voice, always so certain, so careful, so controlling. Your father and I sacrificed so much for you, she'd say. We gave you everything we didn't have. Maybe telling me the truth felt like admitting I wasn't part of that original story. Maybe she thought love meant never acknowledging the before. Maybe shame played a bigger role than I knew. I don't know, I said. But I'm going to find out. The practical side of me kicked in first. I emailed Mr. Reynolds and asked for a copy of the will, plus any prior versions. He responded that my mother had executed a will only 2 years prior, after her stroke, and that there were no official earlier versions in his files. That phrasing nagged at me. If there were no earlier versions in his files, did that mean there had been one elsewhere? People don't generally wake up at 76 and suddenly decide to write their first will. I started digging. I requested my original birth records from the state. It took weeks, a stack of forms, and a small fee. When the envelope finally came, my hands were shaking so badly, I had to sit down at the kitchen table to open it. Inside were 2 documents, a birth certificate and an adoption decree. The birth certificate had a different last name for my mother. The father line was blank. The mother's first name? Angela. I flipped through mental Rolodex of relatives. We had no Angelas in the immediate family. Then a memory surfaced. The way my mom's voice tightened whenever she mentioned her cousin Angie, the wild one who took off and broke her parents' hearts when I was little. I'd met Angie maybe twice, a blonde, nervous woman who smelled like cigarettes and vanilla body spray and who'd hugged me too tight at a reunion once, whispering, "You look so much like..." Before my mother had whisked me away to help in the kitchen, my stomach lurched. Mom's cousin Angie, I said out loud. Oh my God. The adoption decree was dated 3 months after my birth. It listed my adoptive parents' names, the ones I'd always known, and said that the biological mother voluntarily relinquishes all parental rights. Signed by Angela. Witnessed by my Aunt Shirley. I sat there for a long time staring at her looping signature. That night I called Mark. I got my records, I said. My biological mother is Mom's cousin Angie. Silence. Then, yeah, he said. That tracks. You knew, I said. You all knew. We were kids when it happened, he protested. Mom and Dad brought you home and said you were ours now. Grandma cried for days. Uncle Rick almost punched Dad on the porch. It was messy. Then they stopped talking about it. But you remembered, I said. You remembered enough to let me grow up thinking I shared Mom's nose. He sighed. Lise, what difference does it make? He said. You got parents who loved you. Ong. He corrected himself. She couldn't take care of you. You would have ended up in foster care. Mom saved you. Saved. That word sat wrong on my tongue now, knowing I'd been both a rescue and a secret. Why did Mom cut me out of the will? I asked. Do you know? She didn't cut you out, he said defensively. She left you something. $1, I said. That's a legal slap in the face, Mark. It's what you leave someone you explicitly don't want to inherit. And she wrote that I'm not biological. Why put that there at all? Because Aunt Shirley told her if she didn't, you could contest, he muttered. She said something about how you might not be considered a natural heir. Mom wanted to avoid drama. I nearly choked. Avoid drama by writing. By the way, my daughter is adopted, and that's why she gets nothing. That's her idea of avoiding drama. She thought she was doing what was fair, he said. We're her blood. The house has been in the family since Grandpa. It was important to her it stay in the line. What am I then? I asked. The stray she picked up? He said nothing. After we hung up, I called Aunt Shirley. She didn't answer. I drove to her house, the same brick ranch she and Uncle Don had lived in since the 70s, and knocked until she opened the door with a tight smile. If you're here to yell, she said, you can turn right back around. I'm here to ask questions, I said, like why your name is on my adoption papers, and why there's a clause in the will saying I'm not biological. Her face flushed. You shouldn't have gone looking, she snapped. Your mother didn't want this dragged up. She was ashamed enough as it was. Ashamed of what? I asked. Of taking in her cousin's baby? Of giving me a home? Or ashamed of lying to me for 5 decades? Ashamed of what had to happen to get you that home, she said. Angela was a mess. Drugs, men, God knows what else. She got herself in trouble, and your parents were the only ones who stepped up. They had to fight for you. Courts, social workers, the whole mess. Nearly broke your mother. And then Angie left, just took off and never looked back. Do you think your mother wanted to tell you that story? Yes, I said, surprising myself with how certain it felt. Actually, I do. I would have wanted to know. To understand why I never saw baby pictures. Why my birth certificate was always lost. Why I never felt like I quite fit. Aunt Shirley shook her head. You always wanted too much, she said. Your mother gave you her name, her home, her love. That should have been enough. I thought of the $1. Apparently it wasn't enough for her to also give me a share of the house, I said. Funny how blood suddenly started mattering when property got involved. Her eyes narrowed. Don't you dare insinuate. I found something else, I cut in. In Mom's boxes. An old will. Handwritten. Witnessed. Not notarized, so maybe it wouldn't stand on its own, but it exists. I watched the color drain from her face. You went through her things, she said. Of course you did. It leaves the house to all 3 of us equally, I said. No mention of biology. No token dollar. It's dated 10 years ago. Before her stroke. Before Mark moved back in. Before you started whispering in her ear about how much his kids need stability. She changed her mind. Aunt Shirley said stiffly. She had that right. Mark was the one taking care of her. You mean living rent-free while she continued paying the taxes and utilities out of her pension, I said. Using her credit card for his truck repairs. I've seen the statements. She flinched. You have no idea what he sacrificed, she said. His business went under. His wife left. He could have left your mother to rot in a home somewhere. He didn't. I live an hour away, I said. I would have taken her in. She knew that. She didn't want to leave the house. Exactly, she said triumphantly. This is about the house. It's always been about the house. That's why she wanted it to go to someone who'd keep it in the family. I am family, I said. Even if your favorite clause says I'm not blood. For the next few weeks, my life became a cycle of grief, anger, and research. I met with a different attorney, one who specialized in probate litigation. Her name was Carla, and she listened quietly as I spilled everything. The surprise adoption reveal, the $1 clause, the old handwritten will I'd found tucked inside a Bible in a closet. Can you contest a will because your mom called you adopted? I asked, half joking, half not. Not because she called you adopted, Carla said. Because there may have been undue influence, lack of capacity, or both. Tell me about your mother's health when she signed this. I described the stroke. How, after it, my mother had good days and bad days. How she could recite recipes and hymns but sometimes forgot what she had for breakfast. How her handwriting had changed. How Mark had taken over her bills, her medications, her appointments. How the new will was drafted by Mark's friend's firm, not her longtime attorney. Do you have medical records from that time? Carla asked. Did any doctor note cognitive impairment? I nodded. Her neurologist wrote something about mild vascular dementia, I said. They put her on medication. She had to stop driving. Carla steepled her fingers. That helps, she said. Look, I'm not going to sugarcoat it. Contesting a will is messy, expensive, and emotionally brutal. You will be accused of being greedy, ungrateful, trying to rewrite your mother's wishes. You will have to stand up in court and talk about your adoption, your childhood, your mother's decline. Are you prepared for that? I thought about the $1, the word biological, the way Aunt Shirley had said you always wanted too much. I thought about my own kids watching how I let people treat me. I don't know if I'm prepared, I said. But I know I'm tired of being the secret no one has to account for. Then we start by filing a caveat, she said. We contest probate. We request the medical records, caregiver testimony, and we see who on your mother's side is willing to tell the truth about those last few years. Turned out, more people had noticed things than I realized. Mrs. Jenkins, the neighbor who'd brought casseroles after my mother's stroke, signed an affidavit. She told me she didn't want to change her will. It read. She said Mark kept bringing a lawyer over and papers and telling her she needed to simplify things so there wouldn't be a fight. She cried and said, "What about Lisa?" And he told her, "Lisa will be fine. She's not really." And then he trailed off when he saw me. My mother's neurologist, when subpoenaed, testified that he had concerns about her decision-making capacity after the stroke. She could hold a conversation, he said, but she was easily led, highly dependent on her son who lived with her, and had difficulty understanding complex documents. I would not have recommended she sign anything legal without an independent advocate present. In the hallway outside the first hearing, Mark cornered me. "You're really going through with this," he said, his face a mixture of disbelief and fury. "You're dragging Mom's name through the mud over a house. Mom's the one who wrote that I'm not her real daughter in a legal document," I said. "I'm just asking why. And why that sentence magically appeared only in the version of the will that gives you everything. You never cared about the house until there was money on the line," he scoffed. "You barely came around." "I didn't come around because every time I did, you and Aunt Shirley treated me like a guest," I said. "Like I was lucky to be allowed in, not like it was my home too." Daniel hovered nearby, looking miserable. "Lise, maybe we could just work something out," he said. We could give you some of the insurance money. Not half, obviously, but something. If you drop this. So you admit it's unfair? I asked. Or you just want to avoid testifying about how you let our mother sign things she didn't understand? His face shuddered. Believe what you want, he said. You always have. In court, I sat at one table with Carla. My brothers sat at the other with their attorney and Aunt Shirley. I felt like I'd been cast in a play I hadn't auditioned for. Angry adopted daughter versus grieving sons. The judge listened to the medical testimony, the neighbor's affidavit, my own statement about how I'd only learned of my adoption from the will. It was like my mother reached from beyond the grave to tell me I was never really hers, I said, my voice shaking, and then used that to justify treating me like a charity case, not a child. I don't believe that's who she truly was. I believe she was scared and guided by people who prioritized keeping the house in the bloodline over fairness. Mark's lawyer argued that my mother simply exercised her right to distribute her property as she saw fit, that Mark had sacrificed his own life and career to care for her, and that I was revisiting old family resentments under the guise of legal complaint. Aunt Shirley took the stand and cried, talking about everything your mother did for you. Diapers, school clothes, the braces on your teeth. As if those weren't just the normal duties of a parent. When Carla asked her directly, "Did you ever encourage your sister to consider her biological children differently in her estate planning?" she bristled. "I told her it was her right," she said. "That blood matters. That's my opinion. It's how we were raised." That phrase lodged in my chest. It's how we were raised. Raised to believe blood trumps everything. That the child you birth has more claim than the child you choose. That secrets are kinder than truths. The judge took his time. Weeks passed. I went to work, paid my bills, took my daily walks, and tried not to obsess. Emily sent me links to online support groups for late discovery adoptees. I joined one and read thread after thread from people in their 40s, 50s, older who'd found out in similar ways through medical charts, through offhand comments, through a drunk uncle at Thanksgiving. It made me feel less alone and more furious at the culture of, "We didn't tell you for your own good." When the ruling finally came, my hands trembled as I opened the envelope. The judge didn't throw out the will entirely. He found that my mother had sufficient understanding of the nature and extent of her estate, but that there was credible evidence of undue influence exerted by primary beneficiary Mark Harris and others, and that the clause about me not being biological appears to have been included not merely as a statement of fact but as a justification for disparate treatment. He ruled that while the will stood, equity demanded a constructive trust be imposed. Mark would keep the house, but was required to buy out my and Daniel's equitable shares based on its appraised value 10 years ago under the old handwritten will. Daniel, to his credit, agreed to split his share with me. It wasn't a windfall, but it was enough for a down payment on a small condo in my own town. Enough to feel less like the kid who got $1. Mark was livid. "You stole from me," he yelled over the phone. "You stole our childhood home." "I didn't make you give me cash," I said. "You could have let the house go and split it. You chose to keep it." "I chose to honor Mom," he snapped. "You chose to drag her memory through the dirt in front of a judge." "Mom chose to write that sentence," I said quietly. "I didn't put those words in her mouth. We haven't spoken much since. Thanksgiving is 2 smaller tables now. One at Aunt Shirley's where my name is spoken with a mixture of pity and contempt, and one at my place where Emily and my son bring their friends, and we make way too much food and talk openly about anything and everything, because if there's one thing this whole mess taught me, it's that secrecy is poison. As for my biological mother, it took me a year to work up the courage to try to find her. With the help of the adoption group and a bit of social media sleuthing, I tracked down an Angela in another state with the right maiden name and age. Her profile picture was a woman in her 70s with eyes the exact same shade of green as mine. I sent a message that started, "I think I might be your daughter," and then stared at the screen for an hour before hitting send. She wrote back the next day, "I've been waiting for this message for 52 years," she said. "We've spoken on the phone a handful of times. Her story is its own tangle of pain. A teenage pregnancy, strict parents, an ultimatum, a choice that didn't feel like one. Your mother loved you, she said once, surprising me. Your adoptive mother, I mean. She sent me a picture every year until your 6th birthday. Then she wrote and said it was too hard on everyone and we should let it go. I agreed. I was young and stupid. I thought maybe you'd have a better life if I became a ghost. I don't know yet what kind of relationship we'll have. You don't undo a lifetime of one story and slip into another seamlessly. What I do know is that looking at her face, hearing her voice, there's a strange aching recognition, not just in the features we share, but in the way she apologizes too much, the way she fills silences with nervous jokes. There are things you inherit besides property. Some days I still feel guilty. I picture my mother, the woman who packed my school lunches and helped me with algebra and sat up late hemming my prom dress, sitting at that lawyer's desk, hands shaking, signing away the idea of me as an equal child. I wonder what conversations led up to that moment. I wonder if she felt relief or regret afterward. I wonder if, in her last clear thoughts, she ever wished she'd done it differently. Some of my relatives say I should have let it go. That fighting over a house isn't worth breaking a family. They say I've tainted my mother's memory by airing her secrets in court. They don't understand that the family was already broken the moment half of them knew who I was and decided I didn't need to. The house was just the stage where that reality finally played out. So that's my story, internet strangers. I'm the daughter who grew up believing she was the youngest of 3, only to find out at 52 that she was the adopted child of her mom's cousin, the family secret everyone tiptoed around while cooing about how special she was. I'm the woman who sat in a lawyer's office and learned, in the space of one sentence, that her mother saw her as not real blood, and used that to justify leaving her a symbolic dollar while her brothers inherited the home and the savings. I'm the sister who dug through closets and dirty laundry and old paperwork and found a previous will where she was treated equally, neighbors who heard her mother cry about not wanting to hurt Lisa, and medical notes that showed how easily influenced her mother was when the new will was signed. I'm also the person who made the choice to contest it, to stand up in court and say, I am your daughter whether you birthed me or not, and I deserve to be seen, knowing it would blow up relationships and stories people had told themselves for decades. A judge gave me part of what I was owed. My brothers gave me most of their respect. My aunt gave me nothing but scorn. My mother, well, she's beyond giving anything now, except the memories I'm still trying to sort through like old photographs, deciding which ones to keep and which ones to put away. If you were in my shoes, if you'd learned at your own mother's will reading that you were adopted, that most of your family had known for years, and that this secret was now being used as the justification to leave you essentially nothing while your blood siblings inherited the house and everything in it, would you do what I did and challenge the will, drag the family's hidden history into the light, risk being branded greedy and disloyal just to claim a fair share and your place in the story, or would you have walked away with the symbolic dollar, kept the peace, and let everyone keep pretending you should be grateful for whatever scraps of love and legacy they decided you were worth?